All right, we are live on YouTube.
All right, thank you. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. It is 7:01 p.m. on April 23rd, 2024, and I now call to order the 2136 regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Anthony, will you please take roll call?
Councilmember Jessup,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Espinosa, Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Williams has asked to be excused. Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle. Councilmember Boyle is absent. We do have quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Then will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, it's time for public comment. Anthony or Sherry, did anyone submit a written comment in advance or request to speak via telephone or virtually?
We did not receive any prior to this meeting, and we do not have any. And we do have folks in virtual attendance.
Okay, so if anyone in person would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand. All right, we don't see anyone here. If anyone in virtual attendance it has contacted the clerk and requested to speak, please raise your hand now. I know no one did, but I just want to make sure that we didn't miss one. Okay, then we're going to move on. We have no public comment. We're going to move on to the consent agenda, which consists of tonight's agenda, April 23rd, 2024. The City Council meeting minutes from April 9th, 2024. The Utility Unit Charge Protocol Code Amendment, and excusing the absence of Councilmember Williams. Are there any items any council member would like removed from the consent agenda at this time? And if not, do we have a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. So we're going to move on to our presentations and welcome some of our guests that we have here tonight. There's 3 of them on the agenda for tonight. So the first presentation is on the Walla Walla Sleep Center by Mr. Jordan Green. And as if you all recall, we spoke about the sleep center a few meetings ago. Jordan, will you step up to the podium and turn on the microphone, the little green? Ms. Colwell invited Mr. Green to come and speak to us a little bit about what's going on at the sleep center.
Yeah, it's nice to see and meet all of you guys. My name is Jordan Green. Of course, I'm with the Walla Walla Alliance for the Homeless. We are the nonprofit that is contracted to manage the sleep center site for the city of Walla Walla. Of course, that site is on city property for Walla Walla, and so we are just contracted as a site manager for that, but also have quite a few services. So figured I'd give you guys a little quick snapshot history and then kind of just walk you through our basic services and some of the things that we offer and some of our statistics that we have from the past few years. Kind of give you a snapshot of who we are and what we do, since it's the first time getting to be before you guys. So the Walla Walla Alliance for the Homeless was founded in 2015. There were a couple of concerned citizens in the community that realized there was an unmet need in people at high risk and started banding together, having conversations, and eventually from that came our nonprofit organization. The main goal of the Alliance is to provide safe shelter, basic necessities, and the resources needed to transition to stable housing and self-reliance. So the Sleep Center is our largest project. The shelter currently operates 24 hours a day. In its initial inception, it was evenings only. So from 6 p.m. until 9 a.m. it operated, and then people were asked to leave the premises and go back into the community. With the onset of COVID in 2020, funding streams became available through the County Department of Health. And so we were able to quickly turn on 24-hour operations in response to the pandemic and allow a place for people to be safe and sheltered throughout the day. And also the nature of our shelter with our Conestoga huts, as you see in the upper left corner of the image there, is that they're individual shelter units, which ended up working extremely well throughout the pandemic. And we didn't have our first outbreak for about 18 months in camp. And even then it was, I think, 11 of 50 or so people. And I had one other small one throughout the entire pandemic, which was pretty impressive. So yeah, we have 38 of those Conestoga huts. 2 of them are oversized. One of them has 2 beds for women's overflow. Another is an ADA accessible shelter bed with a concrete ramp. It's the only ADA emergency shelter bed in the region in terms of low barrier. So we as a shelter are a low barrier shelter. And so what that means is our threshold to come into camp is very low. You know, we do not require sobriety. We do not do background checks or require identity. We don't care about anything in their background, criminal history. We allow couples to shelter together. We actually allow pets as well. We do have basic expectations for behavior is really what it's about. So we want to make sure that the people that we're sheltering are safe and that the behavior isn't encroaching on someone else's ability to be safe and to have a peaceful, safe, secure place to be sheltered. That's kind of the main goal behind all of the rules and regulations that exist within the camp. So we are the only low barrier shelter within the city or within the county currently, and the county is required to have low barrier shelter facilities. And it's what allows the city police officers to be able to enforce camping ordinances and things that exist throughout the region. When shelter beds are not available, those become much more hard to manage. So shelter beds like ours become very important. And it's allowed us to form a really great relationship with local law enforcement and with the city of Walla Walla to be able to manage this and make it a very successful thing. Part of what we do is our exit homelessness team, which is peer support. We offer advocacy services for anybody that we shelter and people who have previously sheltered or just are at fear of needing to be sheltered. Anything from documentation like state ID, medical insurance, primary care physicians, housing, employment help, resume support, application and interview coaching, as well as many other classes and resources in connection to the many services that we have within the network of service providers here in Walla Walla. So that is a big part of what we do. That exit homelessness team also goes and does mobile outreach through our MOST unit, which is the RV you see at the bottom. We collaborate with BMAC and Providence Population Health to be able to go out in the community and offer those peer support services along with those organizations providing services as well. This is something we launched a few years ago and has been really successful. We were able to use that as a way to provide medical help and vaccination throughout the pandemic, but also just trying to meet people where they are and get support services to people who aren't necessarily ready to be in a shelter somewhere. You can go to the next slide. Peer support really is the piece of what we do that becomes so valuable, and it's what's allowed us to do this well and not have the issue just continue to grow beyond measure. Being able to get people connected with all those many documents, keep track of appointments, get connected with care providers, whether it's behavioral health or substance use treatment, or like I said, primary care physicians, or even critical needs like dealing with the ER and community paramedics. It makes a huge difference. So over the past 3 years, actually a little over that now, we've managed to help 166 people into better situations outside of camp. So that means in some cases, permanent housing with a voucher, sometimes housing without a voucher, sometimes into a inpatient treatment center of some kind, or sometimes it's relocating with friends or family into another community where they have support to be able to thrive. These numbers end up roughly equaling about 35 to 40 people per year over the past 4 years. And that number is close to a full turnover of camp each year. We typically shelter between 50 and 55 individuals in the low barrier shelter. And then we have typically 10 to 12 in our transitional shelter, which I'll talk about here in just a sec. So these aren't just numbers, though, of course, these are people, these are lives, and these are people whose stories are changed. We've sheltered people who have been, we come to find out as we get them housed, that have been out of housing and homeless for 17 years prior to getting connected with these services and into their own place, which they have been now for over 2 years, which is a really big deal. So, and these are people that call Walla Walla home. We typically are 75 to 80% Walla Walla local and another 10% or so regionally local, so the counties that directly surround us. At the moment, though, we are 81% Walla Walla local, and about 8% more of them are from the adjacent counties. So that makes up about 46 of the 55-ish people that we are serving right now are people that call Walla Walla home and are originally from here or have family ties here. And so, you know, we really are trying to take care of our own. You can go to the next slide. So the biggest tool we have in our toolbox, other than the peer support service, and really the thing that allows us to do so well with peer support, is 24-hour operations. This really was the game changer for us. Prior to 24-hour operations, we did offsite peer support and had about a 15% success rate in connecting people with services and moving people through into better situations. Now it's closer to 75 to 80% engagement with peer support and connecting them with the many services in this community. And that really makes a huge difference. And beyond just being able to help people when they're ready, because we're there 24 hours a day, we're able to build relationships with people. We're able to build trust with people so that when they're ready to take those steps, we're there to help support them along the way. One of the tough parts about working with people who are chronically unhoused is the many barriers they have with them. And some of those behavioral barriers really come to light when people are trying to seek these services, and the steps are very difficult. All of the needs for documents and signing paperwork and filling out stuff that you're just not used to having to do. And so those quickly become barriers. They become confrontations. And so we find that being able to have this trust relationship with people allows us to have that bandwidth to be able to help them through those tough situations, and it increases the success rate on the other side dramatically. One of the things we found this year is we've really found a need to be creative with those peer support services. And so a couple of things we've added are we updated our shelter recently to add kind of a classroom and programming space. So we're bringing in outside classes as well as facilitating some of our own classes to help train people in new skills and new understanding, like a certified ready to rent program that helps people understand what it looks like to be a renter, to deal with a landlord, to advocate for yourself, but also just reestablishing those daily rhythms of life, like paying bills and dealing with grocery shopping and meal planning and budgeting and all of that. And that's been a huge step forward for us. You can go to the next one. So last year in June, we were able to open our new transitional expansion. This was the largest kind of jump forward for us in the past few years. This meant adding 10 new shelter units to the 38 that we already had. The big difference is these units, though, have heat and AC and electricity in them. These are larger at about 100 square feet, whereas the Conestoga huts we use are about 65 or so square feet, I think. There also is an on-site restroom for these units. In the main camp, we have restroom facilities that are available, but the showers in those are only available during certain shifts that are supervised throughout the day, a couple hours each day. When you're on this side, there's full access to those restroom and shower facilities whenever needed. They have the ability to come and go as they please. They have keys to get in and out of the facility. So the level of freedom and what they get out of it is significantly higher, but there's also a much higher level of expectation on our side. So they're required to meet with peer support specialists once per week. Part of signing up for this program is setting goals for your 6-month term to stay there. And we expect those goals to be part of what you're doing in your time there. We also require that ready to rent program as part of the expectation of being in this camp. And we expect 2 hours of volunteer work within the camp at some different tasks that we have lined out to increase kind of that connection to community and buy-in and just contributing to the work that we're doing. So far, it's been really successful. We only have a couple of people that have worked from the beginning of it. Many of the people we've started in that program have already transitioned out into permanent housing, which is a huge deal. And we've got some fresh faces in there that are now beginning the classes and beginning to work in that as well. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So for us, the big picture in all of this is that we recognize collaboration is the key to what we do. You know, we don't offer a lot of direct service provision within the camp. You know, we are there to advocate and care for people and to walk alongside, but we do that through the connection with this community. We have an incredible network of providers here that provide all kinds of services, from food to housing to, you know, vouchers, and even just working with our local law enforcement and the many foundations and support networks that offer funding to allow this work to be possible. Walla Walla is an amazing place that as we work to support other communities in launching similar projects, it just becomes more and more clear every time I get to do that, just how far ahead Walla Walla County is in the grand scheme of things, and the work that we do here, and the way that we collaborate and communicate, and the way that we've really broken down those kind of silos and barriers between organizations. And I think it's one of the few things that was a real positive out of COVID, is there was this newfound connection and communication that became the norm within all of the network of providers, largely because of Walla Walla County's Department of Health and their homelessness services team. So that's all the big stuff I've got, but I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Jordan.
Awesome.
All right, we're going to go through council members for questions or comments, and we're going to start with Councilmember Jessup.
Hey, Jordan, Paul, thanks for doing this. It's always nice to see a little bit more clearly what the money is going towards and so on and so forth, and the support as well. So thank you. Just clarification, a couple things, just as I'm continuing to learn more. The extra 10% of those who are currently housed there. So you got 75, 80% locals, 10% of surrounding counties. Are the other 10 from
All over the place.
just a true transient, or they kind of come and stay?
So we find with our numbers, we have kind of the breakup we typically see is about a third of our residents are 30 days or less. They come through, they don't stick around long, and they continue to move. About a third of them are in that 30-day to 1 year time frame, and then about a third of them are in the kind of longer stay.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, so about a third, I see that, about 20% are the ones who have been around for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And so, a little bit of the question is a little bit from the background of thinking about the increase in transient
Oh, yeah, I gotcha.
people here. And then, of course, supporting our police officers who are properly taking advantage of the 24-hour, trying to support people who are here and finding somewhere. So, what is some of the things that help with the people who have been there? You can maybe call it more long-term, or have permanent addresses there, so on and so forth, to become self-reliant and sustainable as a way of, lack of a better phrase, helping others who may be in need of temporary housing.
Sure.
So you know what I mean? How somehow the permanent could potentially stop
Absolutely.
some of our police officers saying, well, they're in transition.
I think I get what you're saying. So there's maybe two sides to this. In terms of the people who are coming and going, they tend to be fairly short-lived, and often, sometimes they bounce in and just for a few days, it's not what they're looking for, and tend to move on pretty quick. We certainly see a lot of that. We find that when you're experiencing homelessness, you go where you have, when you don't have much resources, you go where you do have resources. And for many people, relational capital is the only resource they have, which is what tends to tie people back to their community. So even as we see people from our community leave and go other places, they often come back fairly quickly. And we see some of that with the people who are coming and going and in a more transient manner. Now, in terms of the long-term stay individuals, part of being a low barrier shelter is we will always have shelter for those, even if they stay there long. And so we have expectations of needing to be checked in and needing to be there and needing to utilize the bed that you have your name assigned to.
Yeah.
But we have no restrictions in terms of how long they can be there. And we also have no requirements for programming within this program.
So Jordan, I'll stop you. So how do we help our local transient people? How do we help our local police officers when there are sometimes barriers for them to have somewhere to stay short term?
Sure.
When at the moment, if I understand the numbers correctly, 20% of the people at this shelter are there for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And my question then is, when do they feel ready? Because you kept mentioning things like when they feel ready. What are some of the ways that you work on helping those long-term people become self-reliant, sustained, so as to leave room and have room rather than pouring more money into it is kind of the part of that, right? Rather than pouring more money into it, what are we doing now to help people who are in the 30-day or less, moving through
Sure.
tough situation, whatever.
Yeah.
When
Have-
there
have
are,
a space to-
when there are permanent people there.
Absolutely. Well, the nature of the work we do is some of those people that are in that long term will likely always be with us or in some shelters similar to ours, because there are people that have barriers that are way beyond what the existing programming within our county or our community and even beyond it are capable of managing. Without better supports and permanent supportive housing, certain people with high levels of behavioral health needs and issues and substance use, as well as other things, even just like cognitive issues, aren't employable. They're not going to be able to go out there and find it. So their ability to have the services and income to be able to manage those things on their own, or even if they did to manage them with the income, just aren't there. So at that point, you're talking about that 20% is, 10, 12 people out of a fairly large shelter. It's a fairly low number of people in that larger group, but there are some of those that will just kind of always need that. The addition of our transitional expansion was exactly that. What you're talking about is exactly why we added those beds. Those ones are time bound. Our hope was, when it comes to getting vouchers and getting housing, for many people who have been through the system, it's demotivating because it seems impossible. And so they don't ever start that process because all they know is when they try to do those things, they get kicked back down. There are too many barriers. Their background doesn't allow it. There are no places. There's no places to rent. That's one of the biggest issues we deal with. We've managed to get 37 people out last year, even with vacancy rates under 1%, but it's still very difficult. Vouchers aren't available. Housing's not available. So even if these people want to go, often these vouchers sit in their hands and they expire because there's no place to.
Where are the vouchers good for? Where are they good at?
That's a good question. So there's two different kinds of vouchers. There are the TBRA vouchers, which are locally facilitated, that those are kind of for Walla Walla County only. Then there are also the Section 8 vouchers that are federal level that are done through Housing Authority. And those they're still assigned to a region, but they can be ported to other regions if they want. Those are the ones that actually for years hadn't been available. They've come back available this last year, but we've had a half a dozen people in the last 12 months have vouchers expire in their hands because there weren't enough places to go, or because the barriers that they carry wouldn't allow them the very few places that are there, unfortunately.
So federally, so other states, this state, not just this county.
Yeah, exactly. That can happen. And some people, if they have ties to another community, may head into Oregon, may head into Montana, Wyoming, or maybe just head to the other side of the state if that's what they'd like. But the majority of them prefer to stay here because, like I said, they have that relational capital here. So our hope with the transitional shelter, though, is we can start building those rhythms and showing them what's possible in
Right.
something that seems accessible.
Sure.
Housing seems inaccessible. These
Sure.
units with some additional perks allow us to build those rhythms and they seem possible. Then once you can get that stair step up, it allows you to kind of get to that next step. And that's exactly what we've seen happening already. But that's the goal of that transition is we're not going to force people into it, but we're trying to show them that more is possible than they are able to kind of fathom at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Training programs and showing small successes and that kind of stuff. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Councilmember Cleveland.
Really appreciate you coming in today and give us a presentation on everything. It looks like a really great program, a lot of meaningful work that you're doing. How often is it that you're not able to take someone because the camp is full up?
That is kind of most of the time, unfortunately. We are generally at capacity. We do have beds that turn over multiple nights per week. Usually there are 2, 3, 4 people potentially wanting that bed. So as soon as one becomes available, it's filled up that same night. But we do stay at that 50 to 55% capacity. And that number changes because it's dependent on how many double occupancy units we might have. So if we have couples, we would have 2 people in a hut rather than 1. So that's where that number could change a little bit, even though our beds don't have to actually change.
About how many more units do you think you'd need to be able to accommodate the need?
It's a good question. We certainly hoped when we added the 10 units for a transitional unit or a transitional expansion that we might have 1, 2, 3 beds open on a regular basis to be able to help this. Unfortunately, we found that just not to be true. There are a lot of things that have shifted in how the city is addressing things and the need just continues to be there. I really don't have a sense of that number. What I do know is we kind of see this 50 to 55 range as kind of a critical mass for the work that we're doing. You start adding more of that same kind of true low barrier shelter all in the same place, it just becomes increasingly difficult to manage the behavioral issues and substance and all of the things that go on in a shelter like that, which is why when we did the expansion, we really focused on an expansion that we could add where these are people we already understand have a certain level of ability to manage themselves, and so they require a lot less supervision. So not to say that more couldn't be added, but that's kind of where we sit at the moment. Now, where our transitional expansion is right now, we have enough property there to add 3 more phases of 10 units and restrooms in there if we were to want to. We certainly are kind of looking to the future as to what that might look like. But we're not in any rush to try to jump into the next thing, because it really, where we're at now is we recognize the need to add peer support help, because the number of people we're helping through this, both inside and outside camp, really burdens the 2 full-time staff members that just focus on that work. And so if we were to add any shelter beds of any kind, that need would be even higher, and we're kind of already there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Espinosa.
Yes, Jordan, good seeing you again from after Parks and Rec,
That's right.
where we first met. So the question that I have for you is, what do the trends tell you from the last 4 years to now? Are they growing in the number of people that are coming in? Are they flat, decreasing?
Yeah.
What are we seeing?
It's a good question. So we do our point in time count across Walla Walla County annually. One of the tough things is through the pandemic, that was a sheltered only count, and they suspended the community members being out in the community and looking for people who are transient. So it really kind of skewed the numbers and gave us incorrect data. The last one that came out this last February was, I think, 181 individuals, and we suspect that's still rather underrepresented for those that managed to kind of hide in the fringes a bit. So that number certainly is growing, but it's not growing at a substantial pace. We kind of feel this kind of steady load at the shelter, but we also certainly see a number of fresh faces within the community as the need continues to grow. So it's not exponential by any means, but it does continue to be an issue. And as rents continue to increase and support services like the funding that VMAC has to be able to help with rents and some of the other programs they do decrease, we certainly are seeing those numbers tick up even more so.
Okay. One of my concerns is if we look at expanding and making the program bigger, more beds, more housing, it's going to get full again. And I don't think that anybody in our community would like to see that program explode with capacity.
Sure.
I think that ideally we want to help those people transition into self-sustaining individuals that contribute to society.
Absolutely.
So listening to your programming, what incentives are you providing to strongly move individuals from phase 1 to semi-independence where they can move out?
Yeah, I mean, that, like I said before, I think the transitional expansion really was exactly what that is. Like that's the one thing that we felt we could do to try to create some incentive without creating necessity, if that makes sense. And we just do life together, and we're at the shelter, like myself as well. When I was hired, it largely could have been a remote job, but for me, I find that I do much better work when I'm able to be a part of what's going on, and that's my heart in the work that I do. And same thing with the staff. So we get to be there and do life with people, and so that creates conversations, it creates opportunities, it creates openings to be able to start making moves towards things even in small ways. And that's the way that we do that relationally, collaboratively. It's something that isn't necessarily going to be the same for everybody. It's not something that's particularly structured. It's just about being able to capitalize on opportunities when they present themselves and really being able to lean into them and just put all of our resources there whenever that opening is there. I think that's, for us, that's the nature of being low barrier, and the transitional shelter, of trying to bridge that gap, but also just recognizing that, like I said, some of the people are just going to need those supports for a very long time, and if not forever, for a while, until they made a decision. When it comes to substance use and some of the other issues that we certainly deal with and are identified as a higher level within homelessness, you see programs that take a punitive approach to trying to address these issues and try to get people into programs. Success rates when you are required to do those things are just astronomically low compared to when somebody makes that decision and are ready. And we have seen that firsthand, even just in the housing. So many people, like, the last thing they have is their freedom and the things that they can hold on to literally in their hands. And so they're not always ready to take that step because it feels like giving something up. And that's the last thing that they have actual control of. So until they kind of are at the point of being able to get past the survival mindset of only being able to know what today holds and being able to survive it, the success of getting somebody out just doesn't happen. So we're just helping to build life, do life, and support them until they're ready for that.
Yeah, well, I think that the work that you guys do is very commendable. Thank you for filling that void in our community and
Appreciate that.
for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, can you tell me, what's a typical story? And there may not be a typical story
Yeah, sure.
of somebody that is that you're serving. In other words, you know, you've already kind of addressed many of the issues,
Mhm.
but high rent, or if you could sum it up, what's the background story of these individuals?
It's a really good question. So we are seeing an increasingly younger demographic coming into the shelter as of this year. That's one of the more disturbing trends in that 18 to 25, you know, youth and young adult kind of age set, like definitely in the under 30 group, which is really kind of a disturbing trend to see. But from there, we see so many different stories. For some people, like I mentioned before, criminal background is a big driver. People who have spent time in prison are at a much higher likelihood of ending up with us because the barriers to being housed or staying housed are so much higher. We also see, again, behavioral health and substance use are big components of what ends up being there. But that even those so often aren't the driving force to get someone there. They just kind of exist with it, whether it's behavioral health issues that drive you to coping through substance use, or vice versa. They coexist, but they don't always start the same way. I think the single biggest driver we see right now, though, is just is generational poverty. You know, people who just don't have the support network to be able to help pull them out of tough situations like many of us do. It's amazing what $100 to put gas in a tank or fix a car that's broken or make up the difference with rent can make. We tend to serve people who are primarily chronically homeless. But again, as that age demographic shifts younger and younger, that's less and less the case because people just haven't been out of the home that long. But for many of these folks that we're serving, some of them have been out of the home since they were well below adult years. And just have grown up in situations that were really not great.
You know, I think the driver behind your presentation here, perhaps, and I'm not lining up to say, you know, we've got an open checkbook, we've got streets to repair, we got things to do, but I think one of the issues from our last workshop, if I remember correctly, is that we were trying to address camping, homelessness on our streets and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And the question came up, well, that's great. You've got your phone number, right? But is the city paying, what should I say, its fair share for the individuals that we're sending there? Now, I'm not signing up for, to open the checkbook once again.
Absolutely.
But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, in other words, if we're referring to you, it's the proportion of what we're supporting at the end of the day, correct?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I wish I had better numbers for what percentage of people would identify College Place as home for them. I don't, because we just kind of consider this county as one, as we're looking at those numbers. So it's kind of hard to really put something directly to that. For me, as we're thinking about what's next, we recognize that while we're not likely to be increasing shelter capacity in a substantial way in the next couple of years, but what we do need and what we do see a need for, and I think we have our most ability to make positive change in, is as we continue to add peer support staff and support people. Because the ideal, or the best part about that peer support program is it isn't just for those trying to get out of the shelter. It's for those that have been housed, dealing with getting food boxes and dealing with landlords when things go wrong, or cleaning apartments that are, dirty enough that now landlords are getting concerned. We're able to wrap around and kind of create some of those supports well beyond that. But of course, those things take a lot of capacity. And of course, people resources are the most expensive resources to manage as an organization. But that's kind of our next step and the next big thing that we realize as a need. And I think the thing that has the biggest impact on the direct community. Absolutely.
Councilmember Sherman?
I don't have any questions. Thank you so much for presenting tonight and sharing all this information. And of course, the other council members asked all of the good questions, but thank you so much for your time tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, she sounds lovely, doesn't she? I have a few questions if that's okay. So let me give you a little bit background. We had a workshop a few weeks back ago and our police were telling us we're talking about the camping, right? And so one of the comments that came up is we find people and we try to take them to the sleep center and the sleep center is full. So they feel awful about saying, sorry, bud, you're gonna have to stay on the sidewalk tonight, right? Kind of thing. And, you know, we are concerned about one, getting them in someplace, but obviously it's because it's for the safety of the city, right? To make sure that there's not hygiene problems and all that going on. So it sounds like for the last, or for maybe this year, the sleep center has not taken in any more homeless persons that are being brought in by law enforcement. Would that be correct?
No, I understand where the comment came from, but I think maybe there's a misconception. We take in new individuals nearly every night. So, with the 55 beds, we typically have one bed that turns over close to every night, at least 3-4 times a week, kind of at a minimum. But often there are people that have been calling, night after night, hoping to snag one of those beds. That's what we tell people is if they're looking for shelter, they continue to call back each night at 4 o'clock, check in with our shelter coordinator and see if a bed is opened up. So while we don't have a wait list, those that continue to stay engaged with us typically take priority. So by the time the dispatch center calls in to see if there are any beds available, generally speaking, there are not, but it doesn't mean that we're not taking in new people on a very regular basis.
Okay.
But it is still, the effect of that still remains, and that is when people are found in the community camping, there isn't enough space to do that. And that still is a very real problem. For us, that's part of why we do what we do in kind of a proactive way, both through peer support, but also just in the many community advisory councils and groups that we are a part of that I'm allowed to go work with through our board of directors really sends me out there to do that work. Where I'm able to represent us on the Council on Housing and the Community Health Advisory Board, working on the 5-year housing plan with the county as well. And really just looking towards what we can be doing in the long term to support this beyond just the emergency shelter piece.
Okay. And as you were speaking, it had me thinking that let me see if I can word this. So you're serving all these people and, we do realize that some are never going to be able to live alone. They just don't have that capacity, right? There's nothing else in this area to take that you could pass them on to, is there?
No, that's the issue. And that's one of the many things we're really pushing for as we're working on the 5-year plan and just as the Council on Housing is addressing the future needs of this county or this community. Permanent supportive housing is something that we just lack in the appropriate numbers for a community of this size. And it's something that's of need. It isn't non-existent. It's just a much lower level than it needs to be. So much of the upcoming project that the Housing Authority is working on, the new 50-unit complex that they're putting together, much of that will have that kind of permanent case management attached to it, which will kind of bridge that gap. It still isn't quite at the high level of care need that some people may be, but it's going to be a big step forward in that kind of support. And many of the people within the sleep center would benefit from that kind of facility. And so that I think will have a big impact on how we are able to serve this community.
Okay, and then my last question is, we hear a lot of persons saying, well, I'm not gonna be able to afford my rent, right? It's gone up, I have nowhere to go. But it doesn't sound like those are the people going to the sleep center.
I would say that's mostly true. We are very much an emergency shelter. So those Conestoga huts that you saw, they have no electricity, they have no heat in the winter, they have no air conditioning. While there are facilities on site to be able to get those things in small doses, they still are very much, they're a big step up from a tent on the street, but they're nowhere near what people come to expect for housing or even in a traditional shelter. So many people like that would end up in a place like the Christian Aid Center, or if there's a domestic violence history, maybe with the YWCA, different demographics, whereas traditionally we're seeing much more of the people who, like I said, would be considered chronically homeless. So they're ending up other places, but also some of the people that are who end up homeless for those kinds of reasons are prioritized at higher levels within the supports that are there through BMAC. coordinated entry is kind of the gate to getting into all of those wraparound services. And so families with children are prioritized at a much higher level than a single individual might be. So they're more likely to be able to get into those programs from falling out of housing and then getting support they need on the other side.
Okay, okay. I lied. I have one more quick question. I'm so sorry. What's your annual budget?
Our annual budget, so our cash operating budget is just about 685 roughly.
685.
And that includes a full-time staff of 6 plus a part-time staff of 1 beyond that. We typically run on between 5,000 and 6,000 hours of volunteer assistance as well. And a budget that low is really only possible because that site does belong to the city. And so they own the property, they handle the utilities and kind of some of the basic upkeep. We do manage some of the sites and improvement stuff as well, but we're able to share in that load. Because of course, those are some of the more expensive pieces of what we would be doing otherwise.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Green? Councilmember Jessup?
What? If you can, even if it's a guess, and forgive me, I hold you. In a comparable city of our size, around in the state or in Oregon, how many transient people here as opposed to another comparable city?
Gotcha. I honestly have no sense of that whatsoever. That's just not, not something I have a good sense of. We connect with a lot of semi-local counties and can helping them do this kind of work, but we don't really talk about numbers in terms of how many people we've got here.
What are the other counties in terms of what we do here in a low barrier? Meaning there's not really any. There's not a gateway. Low barrier just means no rules and it doesn't matter how you come, we'll take you as you come type of situation, right?
Right.
Are there other cities, towns, counties that have a similar situation?
Yeah, I would say the majority of them are realizing that they're way behind and now are trying to get something off the ground. And unfortunately, many of them missed out on the opportunities to be able to put something like this together while there were funds available through COVID to be able to.
So the answer is no.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Well, I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
Does other cities nearby, other counties have a similar low barrier transient housing as
Yes,
you do
okay.
here?
Let me be a little more concise. Sorry about that. So yes, we have helped 5 communities around us, Hermiston, Moses Lake. Oh my gosh, sorry. A community just outside the Eugene area, as well as a couple of others, launch facilities like ours, kind of in the same way, working with their city councils and local organizations. So over the past 3 years, 5 of them have opened in similar ways.
So the answer is still no, because Moses Lake is a good bit away. So what you're saying is none of the Tri-Cities towns, Burbank,
I guess I meant
LeGrand, none of them have facilities such as ours. So that's
Pendleton would be the closest.
Pendleton would be the closest one that has a similar facility of a low barrier piece.
Yes.
So, some of the concept or ideas is if I was transient around the
Right.
counties, I would know that our facility is one in which we can have a low barrier entry.
If you could get in.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's- We're certainly, and our numbers show that it's not people coming from surrounding communities. It's local individuals.
Well, 20% outside the county, right? And the other one is too, is you also mentioned, one, that's a good question, how we can help support other cities nearest us to
Right.
help
Yep.
with these types of facilities as well.
And that's
Yeah,
exactly what we do.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Tri-Cities is working on something similar as well. I had a meeting with of all people, their fire marshal came through and did a
Sure,
tour,
yeah.
trying to launch things in Tri-Cities. Clarkston recently has had multiple tours and I've done presentations with their local group as well. Still not immediately local, but close enough, we're a couple hours away.
yeah.
So there are, everybody is kind of trying to catch up and get things like this.
Yeah, Cheney's
But-
transient people are
Yeah.
setting fires, yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
And we recognize the need to be able to support that because we
Yeah.
do want to be able to say, we want to care for our county and we want to be able to help others care for
So
them.
you can use this as a way, as an exemplar, if you will, for other counties and that kind of thing
Exactly,
too,
All right, gentlemen, I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap this one up so that we can move on to our other guest. Jordan, again, thank you so very much. We really appreciated you taking this time and helping us understand the situation at the sleep center.
Absolutely.
And thank you again for all your work.
Thank you so much.
All right, you have a good night. All right, so we're gonna move on to our next presentation by Luafata. Say, okay, Voight, correct? On the downtown public parking lots. You are a student of Councilmember Williams, is that correct? And you're the one that was working on our parking plan, is that correct? Okay. I believe we also spoke about this at our last workshop, and Councilmember Williams volunteered Luafata to come in and share her work. All right, we're all yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lofata Voigt. I am a senior civil engineering student at Walla Walla University. And my senior project is on the College Avenue parking lots. My project advisor is the one and only Professor Melody Williams. And, so for tonight's presentation, I will be sharing with you all what I have accomplished so far with this project. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, here's a quick recap about the project. Many businesses have been wanting to move and start a business on College Avenue, but haven't gone through with it because of the lack of parking space. And so this was brought up to the city, and after further discussion, it was decided that adding public parking lots would satisfy their needs, which is why this project is currently being sought out by the city. And so the objective of this project is to increase available parking for College Avenue businesses. And to do this, we would need to identify appropriate properties and put together preliminary designs that could be used for grant applications. So last year and the beginning of this year, I developed a criteria that was later used to rate the College Avenue properties, except for the Walla Walla University campus. So I took all of the College Avenue properties, and because there were over 100 of them, Professor Williams and I decided to discard the ones that were less than 0.2 acres, excluding buildings, just to bring, our number down. And so that list of properties I believe can be found in the agenda. And so this left us with about 35 properties left to rate using this criteria that you can see up on the screen. This criteria is based on things like current use, accessibility, size and space, location, and also looks at the environmental aspects, so things like trees and streams. Once I rated the 35 properties using this criteria, those with the total percentage less than 70% were also omitted from this process. And once again, you can find that in that list in the agenda. And this left us with about 20 properties. And so with those remaining properties, I reordered them from the highest to lowest ranking and chose my initial top 5 set of properties. Once I did that, I met with the city administrator, Mike, presented my results. And during that meeting, we sort of talked about what would and wouldn't work with those properties. And basically by the end of the meeting, we came up with an updated list of top 4 properties, which can be found on the next screen or slide. Sorry. So here are the 4 properties that we came up with. Property 1 is located along North College Avenue. It is next to the university's village housing office. It is currently undeveloped, which is why it has no address, but rather that long APN number. The second property is 401 South College Avenue. This is located across from the Express. It's also where the Club Bank is. The third property is Southwest 6th Street and South College Avenue. This is located right across the street from here. It is behind another property that's along South College Avenue, but there is a shared driveway that can be used to access that property. The final property is 424 South College Avenue, and this one is located between the Express and the post office. And so the 2 properties that I have highlighted on the screen are ones that I chose to design for. And the reason why I chose those 2 is because I wanted one property on the north side of College Avenue and one on the south side to allow wider coverage for economic development. Next slide. So these two pictures were actually provided to me by Mike. The areas shaded in orange are where he would like parking. And so for the north property, the parking would go through several other properties, and then we'd have people exit the parking lot down south, leading to East Whitman Drive. The second property, the parking lot would pretty much cover the entire lot, except of course where the bank is. And so hopefully this gives you an idea of like the shape and outline of the like space that I was working with for this project. Next slide. So here is my preliminary parking lot design for the northern property. We have a total of 40 parking spaces, 2 of them being accessible parking spaces. And for this project, the design was based on the Ashto passenger car, and its dimensions are 19 feet long, 7 feet wide. And so I made sure that all of my parking stall dimensions met that requirement, and also made sure that it was in accordance with the city standards. To allow pedestrians to safely travel to and from the parking lot, I've added concrete sidewalks in places where I was able to. Basically, sidewalks that were adjacent to parking stalls are 8 feet wide, and everywhere else it's 6 feet wide. The south exit width is 14 feet wide, which is pretty much the max we can do, because if you go to the next slide, you can see that there are buildings to the right and left of that exit driveway. And so unless we remove those buildings, 14 feet is pretty much as wide as we can go given the space that we have. But yeah, these two pictures are show the design with the aerial photo and without the aerial photo, just to help you visualize what's going on and what goes where. Next slide. So this is the parking layout for 401 South College Avenue. One thing to note is that the area with the red line hatching, that covers Umpqua Bank and its own parking. And so I left that area alone and basically worked outside of that area. So we have 39 parking stalls, 2 of them being new accessible parking spaces. And so for this parking or property, sorry, I pretty much kept the layout the same, like how it is now. A few things that I did change were I added the concrete sidewalk that's 6 feet wide, and I removed a couple of parking spaces to allow cars to turn and move without hitting other cars. And I assumed that the existing entrances and exit points were adequate for a passenger car. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the design with the aerial photo and without the aerial photo, again, just to help you visualize what's going on. And I apologize if I'm going through these slides really fast. I can always go back to them if you have any questions. Next slide, please. And so here's my project timeline. The tasks in red are ones that I have completed, whereas the ones in green are the ones that I'm currently working on. So for fall quarter or the end of last year, I met with Mike. He sort of introduced the project to me. We came up with an initial list of properties. I spent the rest of the quarter sort of reviewing the relevant codes and standards and started drafting the criteria. By winter quarter, I finalized the criteria, chose my initial set of properties. And then once I met with Mike, we came up with an updated list of properties. And then from there, out of those 4 properties, 2 of them I designed for, made sure they were, they met the city and state standards, made sure they were ADA compliant. And for spring quarter or the rest of, this school quarter, I'm currently working on pavement design. I'm looking to wrap that up by next week. And then I will be doing some stormwater design and, as required for all projects, putting together a cost analysis of the overall project. Are there any questions?
All right, Councilmember Jessup, questions or comments?
This is great. Thank you. One silly question. What program do you use to do those designs?
Civil 3D.
Civil 3D? Yeah, great job.
Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions, but great presentation. Thank you.
Councilmember Espinosa.
Great work on your proposal. I just have a couple questions. The site selection, I do have some concerns. The bank is almost right across the street from the parking that the university owns, and that provides a lot of parking. So I think that that would be duplicating parking per se, that it's already too close, and people, when there's an event, they will park there regardless. So I have a concern with that. Site number 2. Why did we not consider site number 3, which is a little bit further away from the north side, and that would alleviate more parking strain? And so if there's an event on the south side, we can have one parking, and then on the north side, another parking that are separated and allow for easy access for people. So what's your criteria there?
For the site 3, do you mean the Southwest 6?
Yes.
Okay, I chose 401 South College Avenue because there's already a parking lot there, and just to make the project simple, I thought it'd be easy just to like use what they have and just kind of alter it a little bit. When I met with Mike, he was saying that for property 2, he was thinking of making that like a 2-hour parking. And so one question that I did receive when I presented this last quarter from one of the students was that, what if college students, because it's so close to campus, like what if college students park there, so they don't have to pay for like parking, the parking ticket. But I think with that 2-hour parking rule, that sort of takes care of it. Students won't park there because there's a time limit. But yeah, there's no reason why I didn't choose property 3. It's just property 2, there's already a parking layout, and so I was just saying.
Feasibility, it was more feasible. Okay, well, so back to the council, that would be a concern if we were to address it. That I think it'd be good to have some parking over on that side too.
I can answer that a little bit without going too far into specifics because it has to do with property negotiations and so forth. What it's ended up being with this whole park initiative is that it's getting to a point where really our hands are tied, where I think the path of least resistance is going to be doing long-term leases on university property, because on property number 3, we end up getting an appraisal for that, gave the offer, and per RCW, you can go additional 5% over that. With the people that be for that property, the offer they were willing to entertain on that was about 70% over the appraised offer. And then they pretty much told me to go pound sand when I did the 5%. So the problem with that is in this state, you really can't be doing it. There's not a really clear linear pathway for like condemnation for economic development purposes. And per state law, you can't go above that 5%. So if you have the fellow saying, hey, I went 70% above, that just isn't happening. And we've had that situation with a couple of some really key properties. So therefore, it appears to be in the best interest. There's at least a dialogue about like a long-term, like 99-year lease. So if we're doing this sort of stuff, we know it's the parking lot for decades and stuff. And that seems to be the pathway, because I've tried multiple initiatives and I've been shocked at the responses back from the appraisals, because I thought they were more than fair, and I will couch that remark there on that.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And it hasn't, and Mike has not just used himself.
Yeah.
He has utilized other ways to attempt to communicate.
Yeah.
No go.
Yeah.
And you're right, in numerous occasions, not just in parking lots, but in any time we're trying to acquire land, it happens quite often that people they think because it's a city that we can pay as much, and so they ask for often 50-60% higher than what the value is. Okay, Councilmember Peterson.
I mean, there's some code words being used here.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that and I understand that. But obviously you're not gonna wanna put parking where you're not gonna have development, you know, that's a long walk. And so, yeah, I understand that. I support this wonderful presentation. Yeah, good job. But obviously at the end of the day, this is, you put it where you're gonna develop, and that's, things that none of us know about at this point, perhaps. So thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
I'll echo what Lauren said. This was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for all the work that you put into this.
Will we be able to get to see your finished project?
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
yeah, and in your cost analysis that I see you're still working on, is that gonna include acquiring the properties or leasing the properties, or is it just the construction of it?
Probably just the construction. I will have to talk more with Professor Williams.
Oh, that's fine. I was just wondering. Yeah, no, this was excellent. Thank you for actually taking on this project, because I understand it's your final project, but it also benefits the city. So thank you so very much for helping us out that way, and great presentation. Thank you so very much. We appreciated it. You have a good night, and we look forward to seeing your final report. You have a night. All right, so am I on the last? Yes, lastly, we're not getting out of here before dark. Sorry, I tried. Ms. Colwell, you're going to present on engaging with a consultant to facilitate the lease of city property to private parties.
Yes, thank you. I think all council members and the mayor were present at the April 9th meeting where staff introduced the idea of the city engaging a consultant to administer the leases on city property, namely the water tower, to telecommunication companies. And in addition, to assist the city in negotiating with new providers who want to use our property. And I believe City Council was responsive to that. We asked Gunderson Consulting to present. They presented what we provided in the packet today is the proposed agreement with some additional information. We do have representatives from Gunderson available virtually to answer any questions staff may have, council may have. Staff will be recommending that we do engage and execute that agreement, and that's later down on the agenda. Happy to answer any questions.
I felt like we had a lot of the questions answered last time, but there may be, let's see if there's any. Councilmember Jessup, none. Councilmember Cleveland, none. Councilmember Espinosa.
Just briefly, looking at the numbers of what they're paying for rent, are we anticipating to get a good return on investment by engaging with this firm to negotiate the leases on our behalf?
I would say yes, and that's based on the information we gleaned when the staff had a meeting with Gunderson, as well as what they presented. And in addition to their success stories, I kind of did a deep dive into their website, looked at their success stories. I spoke with other municipalities that have engaged Gunderson, and they're very pleased. And definitely, it might not be, we're going to go get you more money, but we're definitely going to let you make it so you lose less than you might without their expertise. So it's kind of a mixed bag until they get in and see what we have. My guess is that we have some untapped potential.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson.
No, I think it's great. We talked about this at length, as you said, Mayor, at the workshop, and it's one of these things where if somebody comes up to you and says, how much, I don't know what is how much and what do we do and whatnot. And I think what sold me on this was the story that they relate of people welding onto water tanks and burning through the side of it. And the city's responsible for that. So just that, if there's not even an increase in return, the reduction in liability and destruction potentially when these are installed is worth it. So yeah, I support it completely.
Councilmember Sherman?
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
And I would just say that I really appreciated this because we don't know what we don't know, right? So when we're dealing with these companies, they are experienced in this and they know their little tricks maybe or what not to mention. And, you know, we just don't know that. And so hiring people who understand all the intricacies of this type of business, I think benefits us greatly. And what's the word I'm trying to use? Prevents us from making big mistakes. Let's just put it that way. All right. All right. So no other questions or comments on that. We're going to move on. There's no public hearings. We got 6 action items on the agenda tonight. So beginning with the award of the design for the new east-west road and intersection by Mr. Rizzatello.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. So this item, it's under the tax increment finance district that y'all approved last year. So about roughly 2 months ago, the developers, so that College Holdings, they entered in a memorandum of understanding of when they're going to be turning stuff into us. Now, in asking them essentially what sections did you want TIF assistance on, because the money we had for the project wasn't to cover the totality of the east-west road, but was literally to get across the portion of the property adjacent and then link it to College Avenue. And just so everything was synonymous, they said engineering and then whatever was left in the increment to go toward the construction. To be timely, it's best to go with JUB because they are our on-call engineer. And in addition to that, they previously surveyed all this stuff when we did the Southwest sewer about 5 years ago. So I really view this as an element of value engineering, but this is very important. This road will eventually go all the way out to Teal. It'll link to the new middle school. It's a really important thing. So we need to get our ducks in order and get this going now that we have guarantees from the developer as to a timeline. So, and again, TIF is covering this.
All right, Councilmember Jessup, questions or comments? Councilmember Cleveland? None. Councilmember Espinosa? None. Councilmember Peterson?
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman?
No questions. Thank you.
All right, so if we have no questions or comments, is there a motion on this? Is it a resolution?
Motion to approve resolution number 24-025, awarding task order under on-call city engineer contract for $491,500 plus 10% contingency equaling $540,650 to conduct 100% design engineering of new east-west road, Southwest Murray Boulevard, and intersection of new east-west road with College Avenue.
Thank you. We have a first and Councilmember Cleveland, second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. You got your work order tonight.
Hey, thank you.
All right, next, Lions Park Community Building Access for Brownsfield Assessment.
Hey, thank you. So as y'all know, we're trying to assemble funds for a replacement community center. The key thing I'm trying to make sure of though is that we have our ducks in order for demolition because that building was built in the 60s, back in the days when they put in lead and asbestos and all that fun stuff. And if you encounter it, that becomes a way bigger issue. Nice thing is if you opt into this assessment program, the state will actually pay a contractor fully to assess the building. And then if they do find something, they cover roughly about 80 of the costs, and in our region, it'd probably be closer to 100 because they're undersubscribed. A lot of people don't know this exists. So with this, we merely have to sign an access agreement to allow them to do their thing. But since it is city real estate, I just want to make sure you were all good with it. So that's what this is for. So that way we know what we know, and then we can establish better timelines.
Great. Councilmember Jessup. Councilmember Cleveland. Councilmember Espinosa, none. Councilmember Peterson.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
No questions. Thank you.
All right, since we have no questions or discussions, do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve resolution number 24-026, allowing city administrator to sign consent for access to property for Brownfields Assessment, Lions Park Community Center, 801 Southeast Larch Avenue, College Place.
Is there a second? Councilmember Espinosa, second. Any other discussion? Other than it's great that we're getting somebody else to take care of it and make sure that we know what we know, right? Yeah, exactly. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Councilmember Sherman, did I ask you if you had any questions or comments, or did I skip you?
I think so. No, I don't think you skipped me.
Okay.
I don't know.
couldn't remember. Okay, I just want to make sure. All
Thanks.
right. Next item, Mr. Izzatel is going to move on to a letter of support for application to the Federal Highway Administration, Administration Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. Could
Yeah,
it be any
I know.
longer?
Yep, so this one's easy. As part of bipartisan infrastructure package, we now have a grant program for Complete Streets Active Transportation. We've talked about wanting to redo 12th Street for a while, but as such, first we have to do engineering for it. And they do have a bucket of money in here that'll cover engineering. So and you have greater likelihood of getting it if you do provide a match. So I have 10% coming from the transportation benefit district if this got awarded, but basically this would help pay for engineering up to 100% whole way from College Avenue, Myra.
All right, Councilmember Jessup, questions or comments? Councilmember Cleveland, Councilmember Espinosa, Councilmember Peterson,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
No questions. This is great, Mike. Thank you.
I have one quick question. So if we're going to be doing from College to Myra, would this include checking any pedestrians or crosswalks along 12,
Yeah.
like we were discussing?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, if we get it with cover all.
it would help get that
Yeah.
assessment, right? So we don't have to
Yeah.
do it separately. Okay, that's all I was asking because I wanted to, since we were doing it, it'd be nice not to have to do it separately.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, do we have a motion for this resolution? Mike said it was an easy one.
Who's next in
Yeah.
I move to approve resolution number 24-027, supporting application to the Federal Highway Administration Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, also known as ATIP, for Southeast 12th Street, College to Myra Engineering.
No wonder nobody wanted to take it. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Cleveland, second. All right, if there's no further discussion, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Moving right along, Mr. McAndrews will present the award of the Downson Avenue Reconstruction and Rose Street Rechannelization Project.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a couple projects it started as one project, kind of got separated and then got tied back in as one project that we've talked about it all a few times, but Northeast Damson, this is widening the road, continuing the road section from Cargill up to Rose, including utilities, sidewalks, and probably, hopefully adding the rectangular rapid flashing beacon crosswalk across Rose Street. I say that because that is somewhat contingent on us getting an easement with the railroad, which we are working on. but there's not enough right of way on the north side of the road for a sidewalk or the crosswalk to terminate. So that portion of the project is kind of contingent. Simultaneously, we are working on rechannelizing Rose Street from Lambert to city limits. This is aligning with city of Walla Walla's what you would call the road diet, where they're going down to 3 lanes and bike lanes on each side of the road. And then transitioning those bike lanes onto the sidewalk and then across another rectangular rapid flashing beacon crosswalk so that bicycles and pedestrians can safely get to the south side of the road to continue on the multi-use path that we have existing. So this project was funded by TIB, initially just the Damson portion, and then they came back and said they would fund the Rose portion if we tied it to Damson, so they gave us more money. 2 different engineers, PBS did the Damson project, Anderson Perry did the Rose project because they were already working on City of Walla Wallace. So those plans got lumped together. We went out to bid together. Engineer's estimate was about 1.4 million, a little over. We opened bids last week. What was the day? We opened bids on, April 11th, and they came in high, about $445,000 over the engineer's estimate. We feel like part of that is just the bidding environment. Construction costs are high right now. Part of it is bid timing. Unfortunately, weren't able to get this bid early on, so a lot of the contractors are already tied up with other projects, which drives costs up. But we felt like the 2 bids that we got were responsive and seemed fair. So we would recommend awarding this to the lowest responsive bidder, which is Eastern Oregon Contracting for $1,883,222 and 50 cents. I guess I'll open it for questions. Sorry.
That's okay. Councilmember Jessup?
And it's gonna be a silly question because I don't have all the background knowledge of everything, so forgive me for that, but $400,000 over for everybody. It's not one of those things that could be delayed in order to have a potential for not having $400,000 over bid, you know what I mean?
It's a complicated project. Part of this, especially the Rose portion, is timing it with Walla Walla's construction project, which is happening this summer. If we don't do our rechannelization at the same time, we're going to end up with about 700 feet of road where Rose Street goes from 3 lanes to 4 lanes and then back to 3 lanes again. Bicycle lanes are just going to terminate into traffic lanes without any safe access to get onto the sidewalks. It would be less than ideal for the Rose Street portion. The Damson portion, timing is pretty critical with that one as well. Just trying to meet construction windows and get a project that's been
It's just
for a long
unfortunate.
time.
We're kind of over a barrel on this one. Yeah. I mean, I always appreciate the collaboration. I mean, any and always opportunity, but yeah, kind of, I got it.
I would also say that the TIB grant for Damson has some pretty severe time restrictions to it. And because it took so long getting through state review and everyone's review, we're at like a do or die element now with that one too.
Councilmember Cleveland? Councilmember Espinosa?
Do we have any prior record of working with this company, or do we know of the quality of work that they perform?
Eastern Oregon has done work for the city before. I have not personally worked with them. I think they do quality work. They're well known in the region. I mean, I can't personally attest to that they're, the best ones out there, but I don't have any reason to believe they won't be successful.
Councilmember Peterson?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Sherman?
No questions. Thanks, Robert.
No problem.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion?
I move to, motion to award the Damson Avenue Reconstruction and Rose Street Rechannelization Project to Eastern Oregon Contracting LLC in the amount of $1,883,222.50, and authorize Public Works Director to sign contract agreements and approve additional work during the project not to exceed a total of $2 million.
Second.
Great. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed.
Who was it that seconded?
Did I ask who seconded? Councilmember Peterson. Okay, and next is the agreement with Gunderson Consulting to facilitate and administer lease of city property to telecommunication companies as presented earlier by Ms. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mayor. With this item, staff is asking the council to approve the resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement with Gunderson Consulting to handle our negotiations and lease administration for telecommunication companies' equipment on city property. You included in your packet was the proposed agreement provided by Gunderson. That was reviewed by the Public Works Director to make sure that everything was A-okay as far as him, because there will be a lot of coordination with Gunderson Consulting and Public Works staff to facilitate work on the property. So we got that approval, and I have forwarded the agreement to our insurer, WCIA. I have not heard back from them. I anticipate when I do hear back, it will be standard insurance requirement languages for similar contracts, and I will convey that to Gunderson. You did also see the modifications that I'm going to recommend, and I'll reach out. Those are pretty standard with municipal contracts. I'll reach out to Gunderson. I don't anticipate that we'll have any issue with coming to an agreement. I think the biggest components of the contract were the price and then the services provided. And those are already set. So thank you. I'll answer any questions.
Okay, Councilmember Jessup, Councilmember Cleveland, Councilmember Espinosa, Councilmember Peterson,
No questions.
Councilmember Sherman.
No questions. Thanks again, Ree, for finding them. I think this will be really great.
Yeah, just a quick question. Does this take work off of Public Works hands? Does it help them, or is it going to add to their workload?
I think this will likely take work off of my hands. I currently have most of these cellular providers contacting me regularly, trying to coordinate changes to the water tower and renegotiate leases. And it's picked up significantly because of their push to upgrade their 5G technology. And we've been resistant to allow changes to a water tower until we can do our seismic retrofits. And they don't like that. So they are frequently reaching out and trying to coordinate and ask a lot of questions. And so being able to channel this through Gunderson and somebody that is an expert in these things, because frankly, I don't know much about cell leases. It would be very helpful. So
It's always nerve-wracking what they're not telling you, right?
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? If none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution 24-028, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Gunderson Consulting to administer the use and leasing of city property by telecommunication companies upon satisfactory legal review of the terms and conditions of the agreement.
Great. Do we have a second? That was Councilmember Espinosa. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it and the motion is passed.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to go off script, but it is, maybe you can introduce your staff member to council that's here.
Sure. I asked Mike Holden if he would join us today. Actually, he kind of asked me if he could, and I was fully supportive of it. Mike Holden was previously our public works inspector and was recently promoted to our capital projects manager. So until we can backfill that inspector role, he's kind of wearing multiple hats, learning the capital projects role and still kind of helping oversee lots of inspections and everything else going on in the city. So while Mike is continuing to learn his new role, he's going to be helping me out with this wide range of capital projects that we're always working on, and hopefully take some bandwidth off me and help things get completed successfully. So thanks for being here, Mike.
So do I send all my email questions to Mike now?
To be determined. You can still send them to me for now. But yeah.
Oh, that must mean he likes you, Mike. Congratulations. Really, we appreciate you wanting to take another position with the city. It means a lot. So thank you. All right. So let's see, our last action item for the evening is the authorization to chip seal and fog seal Northeast Rose Street and Northeast Lambert Avenue. And I want to hear what fog seal means.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So this one is also tied to our Rose Street project. We separated this item out because there was economies of scale to just have Central Washington Asphalt do it, since they were already awarded the contract for the city of Walla Walla. So city of Walla Walla is as part of their rechannelization on Rose Street, they are going through and chip sealing and then fog sealing, and I'll get to what fog seal is in a second, their entire portion. Our section, there's going to be some road cuts across it, and currently there's a road cut moratorium. So if we followed our own standards, we'd be doing some significant pavement restoration. So we elected to go with the chip seal and fog seal in lieu of that. It'll give new resurfacing on that section of Rose Street. And will also help us, we'll remove the existing striping, but having a clean surface to put new striping down will be key. So they'll go through and do a very fine chip seal. It's a 1/4 inch, typically what we do. Actually, I think the 1/4 inch, yeah, it's 1/4 inch. Typically what we've done with the county, when the county has done chip seal in the past, has either been 3/8 or 1/2 inch. So this is a finer aggregate. And then they come back over it and do what's called a fog seal, which is essentially they spray a tar layer on top of it that seals everything up. So it's a lot of it. Some people will consider it more aesthetic to get a nice black surface after chip seal. It also helps hold some of the aggregate in place. And there's some other benefits there, but because that's what Walla Walla is doing, that's what they spec'd out. We were able to get really good pricing with CWA, Central Washington Asphalt, for them to come in and do it at the exact same time. So when they chip seal Walla Wallas, they will come in and do our portion at the same time. And we'll have a nice clean surface to then come in and stripe on top of once that's cured. Any questions?
Councilmember Jessup.
Does that help with like weathering and long-term durability, having it smaller and or the fog seal?
I would argue that the larger aggregate's gonna provide longer durability. The finer aggregate is more popular with bicyclists. It really doesn't buy you a whole lot of longevity, a handful of years. They'll say, standard 1/2 inch chip seal, they'll say we'll get you 8 to 10 years before you should redo it. From what I've seen, these finer ones, you're only getting 3 or 4 years really before you can see some wear where it's worn through if there's a lot of traffic on some of these heavier roads. I still think it's definitely beneficial in this circumstance. But yeah, it's part of the reason why we typically wouldn't use this when we're just going in and doing a chip seal program.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. And I feel obligated to say that it's better for the bicyclists, and we're working our way towards not having to do chip seal all the time. So
yes,
funding comes in future. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Cleveland? Nothing. Councilmember Espinosa? Nothing. Councilmember Peterson?
So the chip seal, we bought a new street sweeper here a few years ago. And it used to drive me nuts. Right after we bought it, they're out there sweeping up lava rock with it. That's hard on that machine. Will this help with that? Or am I overreacting?
They're designed to take some pretty significant, I mean, by nature, street sweepers are sucking up rocks and debris and all sorts of things. The life cycle on the sweeper, on the engine and the motors and the mechanics of the thing is probably going to go out before you're going to wear through, for instance, like wear a hole through the hopper where rocks might be hitting it. There's just wear items on them in general that regardless of what you're doing, you're replacing brooms and heads and things like that. But I don't know if that answers your question. What's that? It's kind of the nature of the beast, I guess, if you will. It's yeah.
Councilmember Sherman?
No questions. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion?
I move to authorize Central Washington Asphalt to perform chip seal and fog seal on Northeast Rose Street from city limits to Northeast Lambert Avenue for an amount not to exceed 30,000.
Second, Peterson.
Great, we have first and a second. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Robert. All right, we're gonna move on to administrative reports. We have two of them on tonight's agenda. Ms. Colwell will speak on the first one regarding regulating private transfer fees.
Yes, okay, this is a new topic for council, new topic for this attorney as well. So it was a bit of fun looking into it. This presentation stems from a complaint that we got from a member of the public. But to give you a little bit of background, a private transfer fee is basically a way for a developer of property to ensure a continuous stream of income from that property. And so what we saw as a nation in real estate development was developers placing a permanent covenant on a property saying every time it transfers, I get a certain percentage of the appraised value or a certain set fee amount or a certain percentage of the purchase and sale price. So it was this continuing stream of income that came from these owners throughout time. Florida led the lead and led the charge in 2008 with passing laws banning these private transfer fees. And then we now, I think, have 42 states that have those. Most passed in 2011, and that's when Washington passed a law outlining these private transfer fees. There's a list of 10 exceptions in the RCW. The one we're discussing today is, and I'll read the language, any fee payable upon a transfer to an organization qualified under section 501c3 or 501c4 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, so a nonprofit. If the sole purpose of such organization is to support cultural, educational, charitable, recreational, conservation, or similar activities benefiting the real property being transferred, and the fee is used exclusively to fund such activities. So that's what the statute says. There's no definition as far as what is considered sole purpose, what's considered exclusive fee is used exclusively. There's no case law that interprets this. So we really don't have any guidance on what it means other than the plain language. So that gets us to the citizen's complaint about a well-known developer within our community, within the valley, that does this. And that transfer fee, the charitable transfer fee, goes to a nonprofit that's associated with the developer, and they purport to provide affordable housing with those charitable funds. within that development that they're developing. So the question was posed to staff, does that comply with law? Well, we can't give legal advice to the public. But we can see face value of what's going on. And then the question was posed, is this something that the city wants to regulate? Is this something that we want to make it crystal clear? Those who develop in our community have to follow the RCW. And by the way, we're going to define what it means. That's an option that we would have as well. These individuals do have a legal right to challenge this on their own. Of course, doing that, at least according to the member of the public, is cost prohibitive for a lot of people, or just there are barriers. They don't know what as an attorney, you have to have extra malpractice insurance to practice real estate law. So it's complicated. So we're funneling that information we got from your public and presenting that to you. It's really a minimal research, but staff didn't want to spend too much time without direction from council. I think I did provide possible ways that we could regulate it by adding definitions to the RCW, requiring nonprofits to register with the city so we can determine whether they are actually doing things beneficial to that property owner. That's not really city business, but we do regulate things that happen on private property within our city. Require an opt-in versus an opt-out, which is what it is now. Require periodic formal review of the fee. So if someone says, oh yeah, I'm feeling charitable now, I'm willing to do that, but my circumstances change and I no longer want it, kind of give them a pop-up saying, remember this. Prohibit the developer from requiring the owners have to expend any money to get the promised fee removed.
I have a quick.
Lot of things wrap your head around. I know.
So is the fee charged to the new buyer or the existing homeowner that's selling it?
This would probably be a better question for maybe real estate agent, but from what I've seen, it's the seller who is paying the fee from the proceeds of the sale. So they're saying, here, you're going to get this after everything is taken out. Oh, by the way, you also owe this on top.
So it comes out like during escrow.
Right.
So they have no option of sending the check or not sending the check.
Right.
Mike?
Yeah, I'll just say the issue is like the first time homeowners in this area, they're aware of it, but then subsequent homeowners, as it gets sold on, it amounts to like hundreds of dollars. And that's really the issue at hand. As these homes in a certain area age out, you have people selling it, and if people want to donate to a charity and they're aware of it, that's great. But where you have subsequent transactions where the folks aren't even aware, and there's like $500-600 they added on, that's a bit of an issue. So.
Councilmember Jessup?
So in essence, to wrap my head, the developer, make a couple assumptions. So in essence, the developer is trying to make money off the development. They sell the houses. In order to help them probably mitigate some of their profit loss from providing affordable housing, they end up charging a fee to a nonprofit. And that nonprofit then basically makes up for the loss in their perspective of providing a lower priced home. So in essence, if I have 100 homes, 10 of them are at a lower price because they're affordable housing, they're saying that this continual fee goes into a nonprofit. That nonprofit basically makes up for, and from their idea, the loss of the profit of those 10 houses. But it's in perpetuity.
That's correct. It's in perpetuity. And I don't know this for sure because I can verify it. I just didn't do the research, but when those affordable home ownerships, when those are transferred, 50% of any equity goes back into the charity as well. So.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that this is a hit to the seller, or is this a hit to kind of our affordable, forever affordable housing group that we're right? Is it like a private seller or is it that organization?
I think we just have to get really get into the weeds of exactly where
Yeah,
the
so
money is going.
seems to me like it's one of those deals of like, let's put that in the back burner and see how it plays out legally before anything's said or done or step forward with, wouldn't it be?
Well, there's no action happening.
There's not
right
that
now,
lawsuit in Oregon? I'm sorry, did I misread that?
unless you want me to work on.
She's asking about that news story in Oregon.
Oh, yes. My guess is that they settled that, so we won't know what happened. I can try to contact the parties or the attorney involved
Yeah.
or a
gotcha,
source
yeah.
on the ground.
Well, I mean, if it's, I guess my thought is like, if it's a legitimate, I don't want, chase a rabbit. I mean, it's like, if it's really if there's something that's actionable that the city can do in order to help support homeowners and sellers in our valley, then that seems to me like worth it, right? I mean, but
That's a question that's not for
Or-
me to answer.
right.
Yeah, Councilmember Cleveland?
This seems like a pretty far-reaching issue. I mean, it doesn't affect just us, and this is development all across Washington State. I'm wondering if this would be kind of better hunted up to, our representatives.
Or the Attorney
kinda-
General's office who does.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it is something that we're concerned about and want to take a look at, I'm thinking, if they're saying, we're not interested in this right now, maybe there's room for collaboration with the city of Walla Walla and adjoining areas and other cities in our area to kind of maybe collaboratively discuss, explore, collaborate, coordinate, whatever. Because I feel like we're pretty small trying to address a pretty big issue.
Councilmember Espinosa?
Yeah, I think it's pretty opaque where the money is going and how it's being utilized, and it gets diluted over the years, because if you build an affordable house and it appraises over the years and it's sold more expensive, it stops being affordable for the next people. So, but the next people yet need to pay into this fee. So it really doesn't, in my mind, seem to provide the benefit to our community. So seconding what our my council member said, I think it's worth studying more and looking into alternatives that we can do to mitigate this for the benefit of our local residents.
Yeah, and what I can do is look to see if there are any local laws that, whether it be county or city in RC or another state, just to see what's going on. See if there are any complaints that have been made to the Attorney General's office, things like that.
Councilmember Peterson?
No, I support the previous comments. One point of clarification, we were talking about hundreds of dollars, but then we're talking about equity, a percentage of equity also. So you're talking about hundreds of dollars, or you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars?
So my understanding is that affordable housing unit, if it is sold, that the agreement with the developer and that initial homeowner is 50% of any equity goes back to that charity.
So that's with the first story home. So, for example, we have one in Walla Walla that I know of, and they built this house. This young woman received it, affordable for her, and she's a single mom, and at a fixed interest rate that was where she can afford it. So if she ever sells this house, 50% of the equity out of the house goes back to the first story pot.
Severe.
Yeah.
Potentially severe.
Yeah, because it affects asset building, and everybody knows that home ownership is wealth building, right? And it's generational, and it certainly will affect that. Councilmember Sherman, any questions or comments?
I mean, this just feels so big. I like that you're, sorry, talking about going back to the Attorney General's office. I agree with Michael, also, I guess, sorry, I feel like maybe what you're talking about with getting more information from that other attorney, from talking to the Attorney General, see if there's other complaints, giving us some more direction, because I don't think any of us are really like the legal experts on how this should be fixed or even proposed to say like, here, this is what we should do. I mean, I think the consensus is sounding like none of us are really in favor of it, but what is our next step? I don't know. And what can we do in our position to make it better, unless I missed something?
What
Councilmember Jessup?
is this relevant to, forgive me, I've forgotten the names, but a month or two ago where you guys were kind of creating preemptive contract for any developers who are coming in. Remember that contract? And you guys are like saying, hey, before you come in here, and is this relevant to that type of thing?
That would be the master plan development. I think we were talking about that. That could be a term that we could insist upon, but I think we'd have to be the analysis of what we would want that agreement to look like is the same analysis of if we wanted to pass a code regulating it. Can we require it? What's the pushback going to be from the developer? The developer is going to go back to the RCW and say, it says we can do it. There's no definition of this, so I define it as this. But that's a good point. If we're ever in that situation, I think that's something that we might want to have a box to check and say, hey, this is a public concern. What do you normally do with your development? If they don't normally do it, great. Let's write it in there that you don't do it. Yeah, great point. Thank you.
So, here in our region, we have so few major developers, right? Building housing, which is a big issue as to our affordability. Obviously, we know that. And this is one of those developers that works in our region quite often. So we obviously don't want to chase anyone away. But as the other council members have said, it just doesn't feel right? Something about this feels very sneaky. So while we definitely need to send it upward to find out the legal things, if it comes down to it, nobody has an answer, maybe at this time we can do things like, oh God, first of all, it can't go more than two sales, right? Second, can we say anything in College Place must be used on a 4-story home in College Place? Right, something like that, so that it actually benefits a College Place resident, and then stops that constant chain of funds going into that pot. So if at minimum we can do something like that until this gets addressed at a legislative level, which really it should, maybe we can kind of look at those things and see if it's legal to add those types of stopgaps in it.
I wrote down stopgap before you.
Oh, yeah, see? And I don't usually use that word, so yeah, I must have got it from you.
Right, and it's almost 9 o'clock.
All right. Yeah, let's move on to the next is the award of the lift station number 5 relocation project.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This was originally supposed to be an action item for this evening. I asked the clerk to move it to an administrative report just so I could report on it briefly. I'll be quick. We were supposed to open bids today for this project, and it was gonna be fast tracked to get in front of council tonight. We did not receive any bids. And so we promptly, city staff and our engineers promptly reached out to some of the prime plan holders. So they purchased the plans so we can see who was interested in it. There were a couple that sounds like got caught in construction coming out of Kennewick and weren't going to make it, so they didn't make it. And there was at least one other that just didn't have time to put something together, but expressed that they were still interested. So that being said, we are working on re-advertising this, and we'll hopefully be reopening bids in early to mid-May, which really shortens our construction window. But this is a project that we really need to get going. We've purchased property for it. We've pre-purchased some of the long lead item equipment and we are ready to go. I think part of the issue here was we had to wait for Department of Ecology's approval to go to add. We were ready to go to add beginning of February, and Ecology took until now to give us the go ahead. And so we really missed our prime bidding window, which is pretty frustrating, but it is what it is. Again, nobody showed up for the bid opening today, but we do anticipate having hopefully multiple when we redo this in early May. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I just wanted to explain where we're at with it.
Any questions from council members? No, there are no comments. Sorry about that. I know, I bet it's frustrating, so sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all right. We were waiting in here and watching the clock tick and wondering if anybody was gonna show up, and they did not, so.
Okay.
First thing that's happened in my time here.
Yeah, okay, and so the early May, obviously, we're almost there, so that's just as soon as it can go back out, right?
Yeah, we're gonna advertise for another 2 weeks, I believe. It's been a frantic day of trying to get things in order and figure out what our course of action is. It still could change, but I think as of right now, we will re-advertise starting this weekend on Saturday and opening bids on May 14th. We have 2 other projects we're opening bids for on that same day, so it'll be back to back bid openings.
Okay, Councilmember Peterson?
Is that typically how this works? Somebody gets caught in traffic and they can't do the bid, or, I mean.
Say that again,
You said
sorry.
They've got caught in construction between here and Kennewick, and
So there's a time.
they're waiting to the last minute.
They wait till the last minute, and sometimes I wonder why they do that, but I think at the same time, I mean, we've had them sit in the parking lot until the minute before to come in and turn in their bid. And I suspect part of that might be to see who else is showing up. Sometimes I wonder if they have 2 bid packets, and if nobody else is walking in the door with an envelope, they're gonna bring in this one with a higher dollar amount. And if there's 4 others, they're gonna bring in the one where they sharpen their pencil. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, I know, right? And so sometimes they'll sit out in the parking lot until the last minute. Sometimes they're waiting on numbers from subcontractors to finalize their numbers, and it gets down to the hour before where they're rapidly scribbling in their numbers. It does seem like typically nobody shows up more than about 10 minutes early, maybe 15 tops. And so they start trickling in the 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes before the bid opening. And yeah, this is the first one I've done where nobody showed up either. I know when we did our Lions Park bid opening, I wasn't personally there for that day, but there were 2 that showed up late. And for a project that substantial, that's pretty surprising too, because they put a lot of effort into putting these bids together, and spend that much time and effort and then to not meet the deadline would be pretty frustrating if I was in their shoes. So again, it is what it is. We've reached out, and it sounds like there are multiple bidders who are interested and just couldn't get here for one reason or another. And so hopefully they're here early next time.
All right, any, Councilmember Cleveland?
Thanks. So is there just like, you can get the plans and start a bid over these 2 weeks, and then there's a specific day and time that you turn it in? Or is it like you can get the information anytime, you can turn the bid in anytime during these 2 weeks?
So once we go to add, typically the engineer consultants that we work with will host the plans on a site that's called Quest CDN. And so this is a plan holder's site. The plans get uploaded to that. The contractor and anybody that's interested can purchase those plans. When they do, it tracks a log that XYZ contractor bought plans, their general contractor, or they're an electrician, so we know they're a sub, things like that. And so it helps us track who's potentially interested and kind of have a feeling for who might show up. So once a project goes out to add, plans are posted on there. Sometimes we'll have a pre-bid walkthrough or a pre-bid meeting where they have an opportunity to ask questions or show up and look at the job site. Any questions that come in get resubmitted out through that same platform as an addendum so that anybody that's interested can see the questions and get the same answers. And then there will be a date and a time that the bids are due. And so today it was due here at City Hall by 10 a.m. And so at 10 a.m., so anybody that walks in with an envelope has got to be sealed. We'll stamp it with a date and time that, XYZ contractor showed up at 9:57, stamped, signed. I typically wait till 10:01 in that circumstance. So we know that 10 o'clock has come and gone. And then we'll open the bids right here in front of anybody that wishes to stick around and see, and we'll read them out loud. And so anything that shows up after that time isn't an eligible bid. They've missed the bid window. And so,
So the bid submission is at that time and you can't submit it early?
you can submit it early. Every now and then,
Is that information like when someone submits a bid that's publicly available? Like that someone has submitted a bid? Or is it just, it's whoever they see else show up?
I think that's typically why they try to come in person. They want to see who else is here, who else bid, hear the other bids, so they know, oh, I was really close, or oh, I was way off. I have once or twice received them in the mail ahead of time. And we don't open those envelopes. We bring them to the bid opening at the same time and open them in front of everybody. So. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was such a public process.
Yeah, it is. It's a process for sure. And then from there, we take them, so we'll read the apparent low bidder. And then we have to go back and review the bids, make sure they're complete, make sure nothing got missed, make sure all their specific line items add up to the total, they have the right tax rate, all of that stuff. One of the ones recently, actually the Damson one today, when it was initially opened, one of the contractors had the wrong tax rate, I believe, so their tax was wrong. And so actually when that tax rate got corrected, it flip-flopped to the apparent low bidder was to the actual low bidder was. So it's important to do that review. That's why today, when we were going to open this one and present it to council, it was going to be a whirlwind of a day getting through these to make sure they were complete and ready to go before we presented it tonight. It's not typically how it would be done, but we were trying to keep this on track. So
next time, is it going to be Mr. Holden's job to go through that?
maybe.
And there are lawyers that this is all they do is bidding. Because it is very precise. It's very, a lot of ways to screw it up.
There are a lot of ways to screw it up.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, so that's it, that we're down to our closing items. Is there any other business for good of the order?
Well, I guess for bids that have worked, I've looked at Lions Park, my goodness, in a span of a week or two, the fences are up. The trees are being ripped out of the ground.
They're moving on it.
Their dirt's, that was over a short period of time.
Yeah, the first little bit, they were doing submittals and all the paperwork and things and getting their ducks in a row. And once they got going, they've been moving quick. So, yeah.
And if you want to see the color of the, whatever it is that's going to go in the playground.
The playground surfacing, yeah.
There's samples over here. It's meeting about.
Yeah, we'd be happy to show you.
Really pretty. Right.
Well, I was wondering if I could sneak in with my metal detector now that all the grass is gone and see if I could find something in there.
I love that.
I have two. Okay.
Hello.
It's closed. It's completely fenced around. But cars get in there, so the trucks get in there, so there must be a way to sneak, right? All right. So if Mr. Holden, thank you for hanging out with us. Mrs. Peters, thank you for hanging out with us once again. Appreciate your patience with us. So if there's since there's no other business for good of the order, do we have a motion to conclude our meeting? Is there a second?
Second, Peterson.
Thank you. It's like it's almost 9. Could you go any slower? Okay, if there's no objection, the meeting is concluded at 8:59 p.m.